Thank you for joining us for CannaBiz Updates, brought to you by Tonkon Torp. I'm your regular host, Danica Hipsman, and this is a continuation of my conversation with Jessica Morgan regarding recent developments in Oregon's cannabis regulations.
I think a couple of other House bills that maybe we should mention that have been discussed recently were House Bill 2519 and House Bill 2111. I don't even know how you say that. House Bill
2111. Yeah. I'll start with that one because it's relatively simple, but it just finally changes the regulatory body's name of OLCC, which has been the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, to OLCC, which is now the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission. It really shouldn't impact licensees at all, but it is good recognition that, that body regulates both alcohol and cannabis in the state. House Bill 2519 is one that also is going to allow some additional flexibility to retailers who have home delivery as a big part of their model. Before the pandemic, there was probably not a lot of home delivery occurring by retailers, but during the pandemic, that part of retailers' businesses skyrocketed, and it's anticipated to continue. It's easy to just order and have it delivered to you. But one of the restrictions previously was that you could only deliver within the jurisdiction that you were licensed, and particularly in the metro area where you might have different cities and counties butting up to each other. That puts some potential violations if they went outside of that, or just some constraints around what a retailer could do. So now this gives some more flexibility to it. They will be allowed to deliver cross-jurisdictionally. But again, this is one that has nuances, so I really would recommend licensees wanting to take advantage of that really consult with an attorney and make sure that they're doing it right.
So with House 2519, when is that one going to be effective, or is it effective now, or is it the same thing? We're just waiting for the OLCC to come up with their rules around it now that it's legal.
That is one where OLCC will have to go through rulemaking. So again, not quite effective yet. Will be allowed soon. Stay tuned, and we'll see how it rolls out.
And then with the change of the OLCC's name, I guess we just maybe need to alert lawyers that your documents need to refer to the correct name of the OLCC and not the historical name in your purchase agreements or agreements that references the OLCC. So I think then that was a great summary of what we have had coming up in the legislative session. What do you see for some of the future issues that we should be watching for?
Well, I think, as we've mentioned, just really implementation of some of this new legislation is going to be really key to watch on all fronts. OLCC is going to be going through a lot of rulemaking, both on the House Bill 3000 to recategorize violations and other various facets of Senate Bill 408. So one of the big hot topics, though, that really has been coming up lately is the processing of new licenses. As everybody who's been in the industry for a while knows, there's been basically a pause and no new licenses that can be applied for since June of 2018. And in 2018, the Oregon legislature also put it in statute that there was a complete moratorium on new producer applications. So for all license types, it has continued that you cannot apply for a brand new license. You can apply to purchase an existing license, but you can't get a brand new license, both in statute and in general policy. In recent months, OLCC has really indicated that they feel operationally ready to resume processing of new applications or accepting new applications for retailers, processors, and wholesalers, with the anticipation that potentially the moratorium on new producers might sunset in January. Recently, there was an advisory committee held, however, and the kind of overwhelming recommendation by the committee was to not move fast on that, to really carefully study the market, the industry, the OLCC's operational capacity, and really take their time before processing new licenses, to really let some of the changes that they've made both in their enforcement reform and licensing streamlining give some additional benefit to the industry before they might open it back up. And it does seem like the agency is inclined to take that recommendation and potentially wait until next legislative session to reevaluate and let the legislature weigh in on what the total number of licenses or whether there should be any sort of generalized cap. So still a little unknown, but it does not appear that any sort of processing of new licenses in Oregon is imminent.
So with the moratorium sunsetting, then OLCC can do what they did with other types of licenses and just continue to have a moratorium. It just won't be in statute. Is that correct?
I can't see a reason why they can't. So that's what I would anticipate, at least should be a consideration for them, that even though the statutory moratorium will sunset in January, as part of carefully considering kind of the overall market and number of licensees, that they consider making sure that they don't necessarily have to accept new producer applications as soon as it sunsets.
And just to be clear, I mean, people are still applying for new licenses, and there's continuing to be this queue of new licensees applying for licenses. It's just the OLCC isn't processing any of those for licensure.
That is correct, for and particularly for retail, wholesale, and processor licenses. There's no prohibition on applying for them, but they will not be processed until OLCC officially lifts the pause that they put in place back in 2018.
So we expect to continue to see the transfers of licenses from one licensee to another, and those continued transactions, that M&A transactions, will still see some value on those licenses until the OLCC decides to allow new applicants to be licensed.
Yes, that's what I would expect, a little bit of status quo, that's going to be the only way to get into the market is through purchasing existing licensed businesses and applying through that process. And certainly OLCC can decide at any time that they may make those changes. But for now, it seems apparent that they're at least going to listen to the advice of the advisory committee and at least do some due diligent look at the market before doing so.
Well, this has been very helpful. I appreciate your paying attention to all of this stuff that's going on in our state and with respect to the cannabis industry. I think our clients and colleagues out there will really appreciate the summary. So thank you for sharing with us today.
Yes, and thank you for doing this with me, Jessica. I'm looking forward to doing future ones, and a lot of the topics we talked about today will flesh out in much more detail. So stay tuned.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for an edition of CannaBiz Updates produced by Tonkon Torp. Stay tuned for future segments discussing various topics in cannabis law, and visit our website, tonkon.com, to connect with myself, Danica Hipsman, and any of Tonkon's experienced cannabis attorneys for your legal needs.
The date of this recording is July 8th, 2021, and the information contained in this conversation is not intended to be legal advice, but rather general updates on new and developing legal issues and trends affecting the cannabis industry in Oregon and elsewhere. Cannabis laws, standards, and policies are constantly changing, and individual facts and circumstances may impact general information shared in this segment. It's important to consult your legal counsel for advice on specific business needs in order to stay legal and compliant.